qualities, we thought about looking at the qualities that auditing standards tend to focus on to see how they impact the quality of auditing that we experience. And so we looked at the core qualities that we look at, which is auditor's integrity, auditor's independence, and auditor's objectivity. And that was basically what influenced our study. So, John, please go to the next slide.
Okay.
Did it move? I don't see the next slide. Let me see if I can move it. Are you on the next slide, John?
I am on the next slide.
I don't see that on my screen. I only see. Oh yes. So So the next slide is showing. Right. So again, this was the motivation. And what did we do? What we did was we studied audit quality literature to see where the gaps were, and right at looking at the audit quality literature, a number of things popped up to us. The studies that were done in the US centered mainly around US respondents. But what was very critical in the studies that we came across was that the respondents were almost everybody else you can think about, other than the people who actually do the audit work. In other words, auditors did not have input into the studies that concern the work they do. And so when we decided to design our study, one of the things we thought about was that we were going to use auditors as respondents. And even with the auditors, we had to segment them. We segmented them. We looked at people who had attained audit manager's position and above. And also we collected a little bit of data from people who had not attained that level. And the reason why we did it that way was because people who had attained auditor's manager's position or above did not only do audit, but they also understood the politics of auditing. And so that was how we came up with the criteria and the people we surveyed. Go to the next slide, please.
Research questions.
We should be able to speak errors. Right. So the research question that we had was the first one: to what extent do auditors' independence, auditors' objectivity, and auditors' integrity impact audit quality? For those of you who have done any or who have gone near any auditing, these three characteristics are basically the hallmark of the qualities that we expect to find in an auditor. But the question we have is, why spend so much time on these qualities? How do they drive the quality of financial statement auditing? Please go to the next slide. In the study, we looked at the literature on audit quality. We looked at independence. We looked at objectivity. We looked at integrity. We looked at motivation, perception, and then we went around and looked at institutional theory. Now, we looked at independence. We went to the original source of auditors' independence literature, and the reason why we did that is because if you look at auditors' independence dating back to 1960-61 up to today, that same word independence is spelled the same way, but it has so many original source. The original source, as we thought at the time, was by Morton Sharaf. And we found some interesting things which were not very consistent with independence as we see it today. We looked at objectivity, and objectivity literature basically was more psychology. And then we looked at integrity. Integrity was in the medical research. Also, we found a lot in accounting research, and as well, we also found a lot in research. motivation was interesting, and we had to look at motivation people made their decisions. Then we also looked at perception theories,
George,
how people perceive what they look at. Yes,
I'm sorry to
are you
interrupt.
there, John?
I am. I'm sorry to interrupt. The signal got crossed up about 30 seconds ago, and I'm going to mute myself. Would you mind
Okay.
stepping back? I think you were describing objectivity. Thanks.
Okay. Yes. So I was saying that we looked at objectivity as a theory, i.e., how do people rely on evidence in their decision making? And we looked at integrity, literature, and mainly it was mainly in the psychology literature. And then we looked at motivation, perception, and institutional theory. Now, institutional theory was very important because we looked at how people's behavior is shaped by the institutions, both formal and informal, in the environment or in the institutions that they work in. John, please go to the next slide. Um, so, one of the things that was quite interesting was uh, independence literature and auditors' independence and also audit quality literature basically looked at audit quality and the determinants of audit quality. And for the most part, the factors that people looked at were not necessarily the individual qualities, but other factors. So one thing that we saw, for example, was firm size. People thought that the larger the firm is, the better the quality of work they do. People attributed audit quality to the client size. And then one type of literature that you come across on the market is audit outcomes. If auditors are able to issue adverse reports on a client, then to a lot of people, audit quality is good. And then we have other factors, firm tenure, and also governance characteristics. If the company has very strong governance characteristics, then most likely audit quality is going to be good. For me or for us, that wasn't what we looked at, or that wasn't very important to us. We were interested in the qualities or the characteristics of the individual auditor. And interestingly, that was not really in literature that much. It was mainly in. Please go to the next slide for me, John. So when we analyze the study, when we analyze the studies on the market, one thing that was surprising was that these characteristics that we've talked about, independence, objectivity, and integrity, there weren't any study that did an empirical analysis of the effects or the impact independence, objectivity, and integrity has on audit quality. That was very surprising. Also, as I mentioned before, there weren't studies that relied on auditors' responses in their studies. And then the most difficult part was that we couldn't find any constructs to actually measure auditors' independence, objectivity, as well as integrity on audit quality. So these were challenges for us. And matter of fact, what happened was we had to create our own constructs to measure auditors' independence, objectivity, and integrity on audit quality. Please go to the next slide. I think we have talked a little bit about this area already. We developed an in-house constructs and we use past auditors. So please go to the next slide. I'm not going to spend too much time looking at the individual hypothesis, but in a nutshell, what we did was we looked at individually the effects of auditors' independence individually on the quality of financial statement auditing. the effects of objectivity, and the effects of integrity. Now, the assumption we made here is that these three qualities had substantially positive effect or significant effect on the quality of financial statement auditing. The results are something that we're going to reveal or we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But I think before we talk about the results, John, I think this is where we sent out a survey. Let's see what the audience think about the effect of these three characteristics on the quality of financial statement auditing. Please push the survey out and let's see what happens.
So the questions are, which of the following human characteristics is critical to audit quality, independence, objectivity, or integrity? The poll is open.
How many seconds do they have, John?
Oh, we have another 5 seconds.
Okay.
Is that the bell?
No.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. It looks like we're equally distributed. A third say independence, a third say objectivity, and a third say integrity. So
awesome.
Here we.
I love that. I love that. I love that. So what that is fantastic. And how many people do we have on this conference? 12?
Well, I didn't answer and you didn't, so we've got 6 total.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the results. John, please put the so what is interesting about this study? Please go to the next slide.
Do you want the next slide or the next question in the poll?
Let's do all the 3 questions.
George, I'm sorry.
It's not from here. It's not from my head.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back to the screen here.
Ask somebody to mute. Ask somebody to mute.
Okay, hold on. Let me check our people here. Can everybody go on mute, please? Can everybody?
Good.
All right. So I'm so sorry. Let me go back to the polling questions if you would like.
Please put the next question up, the next set of questions. So let's do 3 questions.
The next question is.
We have 3 questions, right?
Yes, we do. Actually, 3 more questions. So, to what extent do internal and external constraining conditions impact audit quality? You have
5 seconds to do.
There you go. Right now we're high impact and moderate impact. Looks like we've got 2 choices. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the results of the second question.
Awesome. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes, please do the next one.
All right, we're going to go ahead and ask the second question.
The third.
Yep, the third question. Hold on a second. All right, so we're going to question number 3 is
what impact does people's understanding of independence have on audit quality?
All right. Another 5 seconds.
And how's the results?
The results are high impact versus moderate impact. Here we go. I'm going to share those with you now.
Wow, that is fantastic. So 25, 75, high, and
All
moderate.
right.
Okay,
And we'll answer or ask the
let's do
fourth.
the last one.
Okay. So the fourth question
Yeah, the last
is,
question. Okay.
all right. Can an auditor who has
I love this
5%
question.
interest in a company be able to perform a high quality audit? All right, 40% are voted, 60% voted. All right, we're gonna 100% are voted. We're gonna close it and launch it. So
No, 100%.
yes, exactly,
And yes, 0%. So I take it
exactly.
that all the people in the audit, in all the audience, none of them is an auditor. This is fantastic. John, I'm so glad you brought these questions up. I mean, you thought about these questions. Fantastic. So I guess we're probably going to burst some bubbles by the time we finish with this. Please go to the next slide, slide number 9. Let's talk about the results. No, let's go to the next one. This is a killer. Let's go to the right. So the module that John had. John, please put slide number 9 back on quickly. Let me just show them what I. So this is actually the theoretical model, and what it does is this all the solid lines are testing for direct effects, and the dotted blue lines that are testing for what do you call indirect effects. But again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this theoretical model. It's just basically putting all those hypotheses in the previous slide on into a diagrammatical form. So, but let's talk about the results. Let's go to slide number 11. And what you would see is that, so what basically these were the things we're testing, the direct effects. We looked at, again, if you look on the left-hand side, you see independence, subjectivity, and integrity. And of course, we looked at effects of external constraints. If there were no constraints, then independence, objectivity, and integrity don't mean anything. It's not anything anybody will care about. But what this study uncovered, and this is from auditors' perspective, this is not from the general public's perspective, this is just from auditors' perspective, people who actually do the work. What we saw was that auditors' independence had insignificant effect on the quality of financial statement auditing. And this is, we're talking about in a constrained environment. And what do we mean by constrained environment? Where you have, clients who are manipulative, clients who are creating problems for the auditors, labor constraints, time constraints, budget constraints for the auditors. All these are factors that are accounted for when we look at the external constraints. But the first thing that we saw that was initially we thought something wasn't right. But what we saw was that independence, as we understand it today, does not have significant direct effect on the quality of financial statement auditing. Also, objectivity, which is basically basing auditors results on evidence that's collected, is does not have significant direct effect on the quality of financial statement auditing. But auditors' integrity has significant effect
Hey,
on
George,
the
I'm sorry to
financial
I'm sorry to
on
interrupt, George.
the
We've lost the signal.
quality of financial statement auditing. In that same test, and we tested these individually. In that same study and the test that we conducted, we also found out that external constraint or constraining conditions.
Hey, George, this is John. I'm sorry.
Please bring
I'm
your phone. Hey, John.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We lost your
Yeah,
signal
you still
about.
don't have the signal?
Now I can hear you again.
Okay. Um,
If you could go back
okay.
about
So
a minute or so, thank you.
where was I? Okay.
You were
So
talking about external constraints.
so right. So what we found was that independence as a separate construct, objectivity as a separate construct did not have significant direct effect on the quality of financial statement auditing, but external constraints and auditor's integrity had significant direct effect on the quality of financial statement auditing. And in the test, we also had controlled for different things. If you look at some of the past slides, a lot of studies had talked about the size of a firm. That's, firm size has significant effect on the quality. So we had controlled for those things. And we thought these were very interesting because whenever companies fail and auditors' names come out, when we talk about auditors creating problems for companies not doing it correct way, the first thing we talk about is their independence. They are not independent. And what auditors are telling us today is that independence really does not impact the quality of financial statement auditing. And then people talk about objectivity. And they say what auditors are saying is that no, objectivity does not impact the quality of financial statement auditing. It doesn't have significant effect. What is most important is the integrity of the person doing the work. And which, when you look back at the cases of Enron, the cases of WorldCom, the cases, you can list all the cases. What you see in these scandals is that in all the cases, the auditors were aware of the situation that was causing these failures. What the auditors did, or what they failed, is that they failed to report. This tells us that the methods to do work is the auditor's ability to report what they see that's lacking. And so that put this into perspective for me. Does that make sense, John? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let's
How's
go to the
that?
next slide. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so that was the first test. But normally when you do a test like that and you get results that shows weakness or something, you don't necessarily just throw the results away. You look at other things. So what we did was we combined the results from independence and the constructs of auditors' objectivity. And when we combined them in a constrained environment, we saw that when you have these two, then you have significant effect on audit quality, which means that you cannot have independence as a standalone quality and have significant effect. For you to have independence, or for independence to have a significant effect, you have to be objective. You can't have either or the other. You have to have both in order to have significant effect on audit quality. So this, which was also very interesting, because the question now becomes, does independence drive the importance of objectivity, or objectivity drives the importance of independence when you're doing auditing or when you're looking at person characteristics? And what we found was that independence actually enhances an auditor's objectivity. Okay, which means that you may be objective, but your independence was going to enhance the objectivity for you to be able to achieve the quality that you want in auditing. Now, the third test is what is actually very fascinating. So let's go to test number 3 on the next slide. Oh, no, let's go to the next one. I just talked about this one here. Right. So the next test was to combine or regress the negative effects of external constraints on these characteristics, because we have looked at these characteristics in a constrained environment. We know external constraints has significant effect. We know when we combine independence and objectivity, it has significant effect. We know integrity has significant effect. But what happens when you combine external constraints with auditor's objectivity and independence at one time? And then what happens when you combine external constraints on auditor's integrity? And this was very fascinating. What we see is that the moment the constraints become tough, you have external constraints that's significant in when you regress that on independence and objectivity, it tends to have significant effect. What does that mean? What it means is that an auditor may be independent and be very objective. When the constraints become hard, they throw all that away. They throw away the independence and objectivity. So it loses its potency, i.e., independence and objectivity are very important when the environment is not constrained, which means that they don't really matter. But look at the effect of integrity. When you regress external constraints on auditor's integrity, it does not minimize or it does not diminish its effect on audit quality. Okay, so this finding here, for me, actually was more important to me than almost everything else we did, because now we know these characteristics do exist. We know that auditors have them. But then what we didn't know is what happens when you have a client who decides that, okay, I'm probably just going to pay these auditors, or I'm just going to give them some kind of money in order for them to accept what we have. Well, what we see in this study is that an auditor with a strong sense of integrity would probably say no, or would probably say no, it's not going to change. Whereas an auditor who has independence and objectivity may probably accept whatever the client is throwing at him or her in order to change the results that they're about to publish. And so this study basically takes us to the point where we know for sure from auditor's perspective that integrity, or the integrity of the person performing the audit, is the most important ingredient when it comes to the characteristics of the auditor. It's not independence, it's not objectivity, it's the integrity of the person. What makes this study very important here, or what makes it very interesting, is that we have focused so much on independence and objectivity and not the integrity of the person. But this mandate is very, very simple. Look at somebody's financials, see if they conform. If they don't conform to GAAP, say it. If they conform to GAAP, say it. Why is it so difficult for auditors to actually say what they see? It's because it involves, auditing involves a lot of politics. And the political side of auditing is what actually encourages us to look at the responses from people who had attained the position of audit manager through partners. And the reason why is because they're the people who get involved with the post-audit boardroom negotiations and other discussions and meetings with lawyers as to what words can show up in audit reports and what words cannot show up in audit reports. If auditors had a free hand to report what they see, then this will not be an issue. Hence, the importance of auditors' integrity in audit quality. So long as I know, there is the ability to report what we see, and that's basically what the problem has been. John, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, we can skip this one. I did mediation test. That's more academic work. Yeah, so this became the final hypothesized model Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I can send you these slides, then you study them yourselves. But it's basically putting all the results, the 4 tests that we did, no, actually 3 tests, the results into one big model. I don't think it will be beneficial for me to spend time trying to explain this. Let's go to the next one. So this is a summary of the results. And if you look at the results, we had different tests. And of course, you see what's significant and what's not significant. For the most part, we've talked about all the results that we found. Again, when you look at audit quality literature, a lot of books spend a lot of time, a lot of studies talk about accounting certification as a strong factor in determining the quality of financial statement, regional affiliation, and the Big Four experience, size, all of that. Oh, the other thing that I should have mentioned when we're doing this study is that we actually collected data from 3 different countries, 3 different jurisdictions. So we had US, and then we had people from the UK, and then we had people from Ghana. And what made the collection of data more important in this particular case was that people from different jurisdictions had different thoughts and different perceptions about these words: integrity, these words: objectivity, and also independence. And even the idea of audit quality, they had different perceptions about it. And so we thought that if we have respondents from these three countries, then most likely we are going to get a more how do you call it? We're going to get consensus in terms of how these characteristics impact audit quality. Please go to the next slide. So, one of the things that one of my classmates would always ask is, so what? I mean, you found it, so what? Well, it is important at this particular point because accounting and auditing especially has become the punch. Is it a punching ball or punching bag? It's become a punchline when it comes to financial accounting. But that is a big task that has been placed on us as a profession, and it's also the one area that almost everybody struggles with. When it comes to tax, it's very easy. The government has the rules, you follow through. Financial accounting, you allocate numbers. Auditing is the biggest issue. But the thing is, we haven't found any study on the market at the moment that has isolated these 3 characteristics and looked at them, their effect on audit quality. So that's one. We're also pulling auditors into the research. After all, the rules and regulations and the comments that come out about auditors impact auditors. Yet auditors don't have words or they don't have contributions when it comes to these surveys. So it's good that we bring them in. I think these are the 2 core contributions that I think we throw in. Now, the reason I wanted to present this study to everybody is because we are looking at future direction as to where we can take this study. And so one of the things that I want to do, John, I think I mentioned to you that I was going to present this at AAA. What we are looking for is ideas about how to move this study forward into other areas. One thing that we are trying to do is to develop a construct that will measure auditors' integrity. And we've done some work on it. We still haven't finished, but we're still working on it. But we're still looking for direction in terms of how we can take this into another realm. Still on audit quality, but carve out or create additional dimensions with this study. Please go to the next slide. I think we can pass on this. Let's go to the next one. So the limitations that we're talking about here pertains to the way people respond to questions. When we first created our first set of questions, people, when we did a pilot, auditors didn't really want to answer the questions because they looked at the questions as if we're asking them about their own behavior and how they will answer questions. So we had to change them a little bit. But what tends to happen when you create a survey is that you come across people tend to answer questions using, come across like social desirability issues, i.e., people answer questions as if you're asking what they would do, and people don't want you to think, oh, if I saw $20 here, I'll pick it up. Then, or if you ask an auditor, if you see $20 on the floor, would you pick it up? If I say yes, then it means I'm susceptible to bribing. If I say no, then it may make me look good. But the fact is that if I see it, I'll pick it up. And because you're asking the question, he's going to say no, he won't. That's socially desirable. And so that could potentially create problems with the survey that we have or the information we've collected. But we put a few more measures in there to reduce the level of social desirability questions. So I think we have also, when we separated the data, only 113 of the respondents had attained the audit manager and above role or position, which means that, but the thing is 113 people cannot speak for millions of auditors in the world. And so that for us creates a little bit of limitation. But the thing is that for the study we have, even if this number increased to 100, increased by even 100-fold, I don't think the results.
Hey, George,
But we
we've
still have to
broken
state
up.
it as a limitation. Please go.
We've broken up just a little bit. You were talking about if we multiplied the results by 100-fold and then the signal died. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So we're saying that I was saying that the we put the number of respondents who had attained audit manager's position and above as a limitation because only 113. But the actual thing is that even if we increase this results by 100-fold, I think the results will be the same. The results of the analysis will be the same. So it's really not a limitation, but we still have to show it because it's only 113 of the respondents who had attained the position of audit manager or above. Okay. And also, I have to disclose that I am an accountant, and usually when you're an accountant, you the potential for bias is there, so I have to disclose it as well. But again, I don't think it's a problem. So future research plans. I've already done the first one, interview auditors to understand their perception of the enactment of independence of constraining conditions. And we're still working on the construct. What we want to be able to achieve is that if a hiring manager wants to hire somebody who has the highest level of integrity, they should be able to have a number of questions to ask. And that has been so difficult to do because when you take a typical integrity construct, there are about 40 questions in there, and that's just not possible. We need to be able to cut it down to a maximum of 10, and that's something that we've been working on. Please go to the next slide. Right, so this brings us to the end of our discussion.
Hey, George, the audio has cut out again. There we go. Now you're back.
This is purely theoretical work, but it has significant practical. Some of it has significant practical implication. The word independence, as we know it, is not what it's supposed to be or what it was originally intended to be. And so we have to look at independence slightly in a different light. But regardless of what anybody thinks, it's what comes out of the auditor, the character of the auditor, the integrity of the auditor, that really matters. I think all the methods work. We just need to look at who is doing the audit, who's facing the client, and who's not facing the client going forward if we want to achieve the best audit quality. And that's what I have to say in this situation. Any questions?
So, George, thank you very, very much for your great presentation here. I'm going to open the mic up for any questions. And George, you may also want to invite people as to how to reach you and provide insight in terms of um, their perhaps ideas about how you may want to structure your for future research. So I've turned off
Absolutely.
the mute button here. For those of you who have questions, please turn off your mute button and you should be able to position your question with George. Or if you wish, alternatively, in the chat box below, please go ahead and type your questions. So if you want to type your questions, then I'll relay them to George. All right. George, you had a couple of slides at the end of the presentation. Would you like me to put those up or are we good here?
Let me see what they are. Let me see.
Okay. So
So, somebody's truck is making noise. Let me see the next one, please.
all right.
Let me see the next one, please.
All right.
Yeah, I mean these are all fine. We can go to the previous slide, 23. Slide 23 is basically you remember we're talking about the survey. So these were the survey questions that we disseminated, and we had our people respond to it. We used Qualtrics and disseminated this, and people responded to it. People were very, very generous because it actually occurred at the time when audit, basically in the middle of auditing season. I think it was like December, January, February, thereabouts.
Very, very interesting, George. Thank you so much. When do you plan to start your next research project? If people would be
We
interested in reaching
we
out.
we we're already in the middle of it, but
Okay.
we're welcome. Yeah, we welcome. We always welcome ideas. I've read almost every research out there about audit quality, but that's what you see until somebody points out another one to you. So almost every time somebody tells me he has an idea, I welcome it. If you have the study, I would ask you to email it to me. John, please put my email up so that people can see. Actually, let me
Okay.
type it in.
Okay.
George underscore at hotmail.com. I just put it in my in the chat room so that people can see it.
Okay.
Please
Hold
feel
on.
free to reach out with contributions, comments, or questions. All of them are welcome.
And that's at hotmail.com. Okay, George, I'm going to go ahead and switch from the presentation to our final slides. Again, George, thank you so much for joining us from Ghana, and I appreciate your working through all the connectivity issues. Again, everybody, George's presentation on what auditors think about audit quality, new perspectives on an old issue is a great presentation that we're happy to have. This will earn you 1 CPD credit. And if you have questions, please feel free to email George at the email up above, George_Bob, B-A-A-H, at hotmail.com. With that said, we very much appreciate, George, your time today, and each of you ACCA members, thank you for participating in the virtual chapter. At this point, Yinka, I'm going to turn it over to you if you would like to say something about the next virtual chapter meeting.
Hello.
Hi.
Uh, Thank you all for participating today, and we are so sorry for the delay in starting the webinar and for the connectivity. We are looking forward to another visual presentation, July 13th. It's going to be about internal audit. So you can register. I think the invitation will go out soon, maybe in like 2 weeks' time. It's going to be about talking more about the audit perspective from from an international perspective. I think the presenter is from Dubai, UAE. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. Thank you for your time today. Bye.
And Sumai, Yinka, what's the title of the presentation again?
It's going to be about internal audit, international perspective from somebody in UAE. That is what it's going to be about.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to go ahead and enter that in the chat bar. And once again, thank you everyone for your participation today. George, thanks for your investment in the presentation. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, John. And I'll see you on Thursday. You're coming to New York, right?
Yes, exactly. I do look forward to that. And Yinka, I'll see you.
Okay.
We'll see you Wednesday.
And if anybody does want a copy of the presentation, please feel free to reach out to accca.usa@acccaglobal.com. Any further questions for George? Okay, I'm going to leave the presentation platform open for another 5 minutes, and we welcome anyone's questions. Thank you again.
On Thursday.
Yes, we look forward to seeing you, George, on Thursday. I'm going to be there probably around 10:30 or 11.
Okay. All right. Take care.
All right. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time today.